Welcome back to another episode. On this one, I want to kind of talk about something that was a little bit easier for me to talk about, not so deep, and something that I'm personally have become passionate about just in the past year, really, and something that I think is important for people to know, and it's definitely a lot more important the younger you learn it. So, title of this one is "Why Wasting Money When You're Young is So Much Worse Than You Think." So we already know that wasting money is bad, or like sometimes we kind of get that icky feeling when we know we overspend. We kind of get that buyer's remorse, but we think a lot of times, oh, I'll just make it back later. And one of the things that I want to address here in the conversations that I have with some people, I think some people think that you can retire or that you just can stop working if you have just a really good year. That is not the case. If you want to have, well, we'll get into this later, but for you to truly retire, it is going to take much more than one really great year, no matter how amazing you are. It is going to take, as we're going to see here, a lot of time and a lot of consistency, really. So the first one is figure out what our goals are. So this is important because obviously this is going to figure out what the math is for later. So figure out what is it you want as far as like, what do you want your house to look like? Where would you maybe want to live? What type of car do you want to drive? How many, what do you want your family situation to look like? These are all very important things to figure out what it is you're going to have to do in order to get these things, right? Because the wonderful thing about this, especially if you start young, you can have what you want. You just have to, one, know what that is, and then two, more consciously make steps towards those goals. And so, what do you want your lifestyle to be? How much do you want to travel? Do you want to go on vacations? What do you want your vacations to look like? Do you want to be the type of person that has a country club membership, or are you gonna, invest in something else? Like, what do you want your leisure time to look like? Another good one. If you had all the money you needed, what would that look like? If you thought, okay, this is all I need to be happy. Well, tell me, show me, what does that look like? And specifically, what would you do? Would you stop working? Because if you'd stop working, then, you're telling me either maybe you're not in a field you could see yourself long term, you're not super passionate about it, or really you could just be burnt out and want to spend more time with, your family or spend more time traveling. So you value that. Or would you say, hey, maybe I'd keep working, but I know I would feel less stressed. So in that sense, you really value security. And that's a very good goal, and that's important. And that's sort of what I value. And I can't tell you just, the type of um, freedom and the type of, just calmness that you get. Of course, there's times you still worry about it and you're in your head doing math, but when you have a legitimately good savings, there's the stress of the world is a lot less. It's a lot more manageable. When would you like to retire and or cut back on working? I think, for the most part, everyone's goal should be, hey, I want to be able to cut back working by 50, definitely by 60, or full on retire at that point. For me, my goal is maybe just cutting back more or doing different things as far as like either entrepreneurial type or philanthropy work, something like that where I'm helping others. But I mean, I really do see myself, I really enjoy what I do now and I see myself enjoying it for a long time. So I'm not in a rush to get out of it per se, but I want to have that option because I value the options. And so, first, why is it we spend money in the present? Normally, it's because we are impulsive. A lot of us are driven by our emotions, and that's obviously the first thing that we have to understand. Because you might see some financial influencers coming on saying, presenting that it is so simple and that it is so easy, and it's just a math problem, right? And in some sense, they're right, yes, but there is a lot of psychology that is attached when it comes to money, of course. So, I know even me, I spend impulsively compared to what it, could be. The other one is, we'll use it to impress others, friends, girls, etc., boys, whoever. Um, so like this is, for example, an example I can think of for myself is maybe keeping an apartment longer than I should have. I think I should have gotten out of my apartment lease earlier, or I re-signed one, and I think when my previous one ended, I should have just gotten out of it there. But I was like, no, I want to keep living my own, proving, myself, whatever. If I want someone to come over, obviously want to have a place for that. La la la, horrible decision. I was able to get out of it, thankfully, and build off of that. But I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I just made the decision I made earlier. The third one, peer pressure. I know someone right now who's in Mexico, and to each their own. But in my opinion, I don't know if they should be in Mexico because they got bills to pay. And the reason they're in Mexico is because their friend kind of like coerced them into it, like booked the trip, like, hey, we're going, it's for my birthday, boom, boom, boom. Yes, like enjoy your life, of course, but also like, you got stuff to do. You have to set yourself up for the long run because, I mean, kind of back to the first slide here, the goal should be to have the life you want eventually, yes, and also for as long as possible. Like that is the goal here, right? The goal is to not have it for 6 months when you're 24, 27, 23, whatever, and to never have it again and you're working for the rest of your life. Because I've had clients tell me, I remember a specific client comes to mind, and she's telling me like, she's working long days teaching kids how to ice skate. That's not what she wants to do. Her body isn't in great, she's not in great health. She's financially stressed and strained. And sure, she lived it up in her 20s and, whatever else, but who's to say you couldn't have made better decisions in your 20s, taking care of your body, and enjoy that in your 30s and 40s? This is just my opinion, of course. Next up is obviously greed. I think a lot of people, we have not found the depths of human greed, and I think we're all kind of a prisoner to it in our own ways, depending on what that is. And for some people, just some people can't have enough. And for a lot of people, I didn't maybe put this in here, and it's not greed per se, but they always think they'll start saving. Oh, I knew this girl. I dated this girl. She was making, 70 grand a year, right? I mean, good for her. She's in her mid 20s making 70 grand a year. You got it, girl. Like that's the average American. There's 40-year-olds that are making as much as you, and there's 50 and 60-year-olds that don't make anywhere close to you, especially with benefits. So, I mean, that's another thing. But her thing was, oh, well, it's just not enough. I got too much stuff. I'll start saving when I get 100,000. It's like, as a single person with no kids, if you can't save a little bit of money when you have 70 grand, what's going to be different when it's 100 grand? Because that kind of, it's not necessarily greed. I don't want to label it as that, but just that lifestyle creep is going to come up and, kind of take away all that money you think you're making. Because that's kind of another thing I like to say. But if you made 70 grand in the year and you end with zero, like if you got paid for your job for $70,000 and you end the year with $0 in your bank account or not much more than the year before, you didn't make any money that year. You might have had some fun, but you kind of wasted a year. And we'll see how important that is here soon. And the fifth and final one that I put on this one is just lack of perspective. And this is just more so on the number side of things. And of course, I think perspective goes into zooming out a little bit, not only in the moment, but of course, over the course of many, many moments and many, many years. So if you don't have the perspective of, hey, what is this actually costing me? You're not going to make the most informed and best decisions that you could. So just gaining that perspective is obviously crucial. And so now time for the fun part. Whoa, really bright. The math of it. So this is from the Money Guy podcast. This is a great podcast to listen to. And so I got two here, and we'll start with the left. And so basically the S&P 500 is something you can invest in for essentially free. Like there's no charge if you're just investing in the S&P every single month, every couple months, whatever it is. And this chart is assuming a lifetime rate of return of 10%, and it actually decreases by 0.1%. And so it reaches a terminal rate of 5.5% for a 65-year-old. So it's actually kind of being conservative with this guess here, right? And if you don't know, the S&P 500 over the past 12 months has gone up 25%. Now, that's due to a lot of inflation. However, if inflation is something that you're worried about or you can feel it kind of eating into your pockets, this is how you hedge against that. This is how you actually have your money grow alongside with this kind of terrible inflation. So at least when inflation is bad, you're at least still making money. And you can see here, this is kind of what changed my life and my perspective. that for a 20-year-old, every dollar that is invested will turn into $88 for a 65-year-old. And so the way I just instantly thought of that, I was like, shoot, man, if I put in $1,000, that would be $88,000 by the time I'm 65, you know? And that's obviously no small amount. And so, or if you do, 188 times, that's 8,800, right? So every $100 you're spending has the opportunity to turn into that by the age of 65. And, the money guys, they have a funny little beer koozie almost, and says this $1 beer cost me $88. And so now this is kind of where the perspective comes in. And you start thinking like, oh my gosh, like when I spend that $100 every single month for that thing, that's costing me really $8,800 in the long run. I could probably cut back $50 there and $50 there and put it towards this. And I mean, that's just 100% true. So there's so many things now that when I start looking at the cost of them, I'm not only looking at the cost of them in the moment, I'm looking at the cost of it at the age of 65 of what it could turn into, which I think is a good practice to do. And it doesn't always stop me every single time, but it definitely gives me another like kind of blocker to think about it. Yeah. And so you can see here for a 25-year-old, and it drops drastically. That's the thing you can notice about this, but it's only up to the age of 65. And who knows, by the time I'm age 65, the life expectancy could be 100 or 110, who knows? So you can even allow this more and more time to grow. And so by 25, each dollar you put in is $44. By 30, it's 23, 35, it's 12. And I don't know if there's any 40-year-olds watching this, but you can see as it continues. And so if you look at the chart on the right here, you can see the 20-year-old would only need to invest $95 a month in order to be a millionaire at age 65. And $200, really $191 a month to have 2 million at age 65, which, and from my perspective, is still relatively young if you do the right things and take care of your body. I think a lot of people now think you die at 30 or 40. And so it's hard for them to say, oh, well, by then it's, it wouldn't even matter. It's like, yes, it would. Like, do you think you're just dead at 35? Definitely not. So, and it goes back to my old saying, it's like, you're going to be broke when you're 20 or you're going to be broke when you're 40. And I would, it's a lot more socially acceptable to be broke when you're 20 than to be broke when you're 40. And it's a lot easier to be broke when you're 20. People are a little bit more forgiving. They give you a little bit more chances. Right when you're broke and you're 35, 40, they're going to start getting some side eye. You're not going to get as many handouts, that's for sure. And the other thing I hear too, that's so silly on a lot of these social media sites is like, oh, well, by the time I'm 65, $2 million isn't going to be worth anything. Well, it's going to be worth a lot more than $0, right? It's like, what's the alternative? You have nothing. So, kind of just, I guess, putting that into perspective a little bit. I think the math of this is super interesting and super intriguing. And it is simple, right? Now it's about correcting it, right? So if this is kind of resonating with you and you're like, man, dude, I could really start putting stuff aside, or maybe that doesn't resonate with you yet because you feel like there's no shot, right? Oh, I can't even do 95. Well, start with 50. Just open the account, make it easy to start putting stuff in there. And so how do we correct this, right? Well, initially, you have to start a budget, right? There's just absolutely no way. And it cracks me up too when people like this guy in Mexico. I love him. But yeah, I got my budget, but there's, I don't know, it's some bullshit. Like, I don't know, there's not enough money, or I don't know. It's like, it's literally like that. Like, I don't know what happened. It's like, dude, you have the budget. It's like having a calendar. You created it. You made the sandwich. Like, you get to decide like what this is, right? Like, and this is where it ties back in the goals. It's like, do you want this or not? Because if you don't want it, then yeah, it's not going to happen. But if you do want it, you set the budget, you give yourself, money to go get a haircut, money to go get a pedicure, money to do your nails, this, that, and whatever. And even if it's $50 by the end of the month, you put that aside, that's $600 by the end of the year. And you do that at a bigger scale, Let's say you get up to a point where you're saving $500 a month. $500 a month is $6,000 by the end of the year. If you have $6,000 in your bank account, you're doing better than probably 80-90% of Americans. So start budgeting. Set spending goals for the month. So I know once every month I look at my spending summary and I go into it and I say, okay, what did I, and it has it in the categories. And this is why I love Chase Bank, because it does have the spending summary. It's beautiful. And it'll tell you exactly, the amount you spend on each category. And so I'll go into each of those categories and I'll look at like kind of the higher price things that I did in there, or see if there's any patterns within those categories. And I'll say, like if it's shopping and I have 18 Amazon orders, I write on there after I print it out, I say too much Amazon, right? And then now we go into that. So now what do? So we delete the Amazon app, right? We create a barrier there. So you make it harder to obviously do those things. Make the bad habits harder and the good habits easy. Whatever else it could be, like, even food, I think it's one, food and dining or food and drinks, whatever it is a category in there. And I can see like, oh shit, like I went out way too much this month. And part of it was I was trying to go on dates. I was going on dates. I was trying to impress people. I was trying to, woo, whatever. And it's like, so I got to cut that out this month. I do not have the ability to do it. And that's I just kind of got ahead of myself there, but that's kind of finding out what the leaks are and kind of going into it. Why are we having these leaks? Are you going out because maybe that you aren't getting out enough? What are other ways you can maybe socialize? Like I know I like to go play volleyball, and that kind of helps me get my socialization in there, and I don't have to spend any money when I go do that. But that's really tiring sometimes. And then that's the next one. Find hobbies that don't involve any money. Like for me, I like to go on walks, play volleyball, and now kind of maybe do this about just things that I'm passionate about. And the last one, which is really important, and this is something that I did this week, and I would read the text, but I don't have my phone in here, but it says, be okay with being honest with friends, right? I think too many times people will invite us out, and it's people who don't have this same perspective, and we get caught up in that, right? And not to say that they're wrong or it's not okay or whatever, but, bad company, and not bad, but, company that doesn't align with what we align with corrupts our habits that are, good. Bad company corrupts good habits. So so you got to be honest. And if they're good friends, they'll understand it. So for example, like this girl, she asked me, hey, do you want to go get drinks Friday night somewhere? Well, I won't say where I live, but somewhere, right? It's kind of an expensive part of town. And, I know there'll probably be drinks involved. So, and it was Friday night. I had clients Saturday. So obviously, one, I'm going to go out. Two, I'm going to spend money on drinks. So I'm spending money. Third, I'm going to be drinking alcohol, which is not good for me in any capacity I have found. And it just doesn't make me feel good. Four, I'm staying out way past my bedtime. And five, now I'm shitty for my clients the next day. Right. So just completely not good. Right. And obviously I'm not saying all that to her, but what did I say? I said, hey, like, I like walks. Like, can we go for a walk instead? I'm also not trying to spend any money this month, right? I'm trying to spend less this month. And if they're a good friend, they'll look at that and say, oh, okay. I mean, hey, I just want to spend time with you. I want to talk. I want to be able to get some stuff off my chest. So yeah, let's go for a walk. That sounds nice. Or, maybe we could just, stay in or do something. Right. And that's really important because one, obviously you're saving yourself money and you're setting up a boundary, but three, most people are going to relate with that and say, oh, thank goodness, man. Yeah. I honestly, now that you say that, I don't want to spend any money either. I didn't know we could just hang out. So I think most people will appreciate that too. Cause I mean, it is a very tough time right now. And so, find kind of your community or people that you can do that with, and not detractors, right? I think detractors are very common. And, in some ways, maybe I'm a detractor from someone. Maybe some people probably say I detract joy because of my intensity sometimes. But and that's okay. And then I'm not, don't have me around. I'm not the person to be around for you. But, just find the people that you align with, understand what, like I said, initially what your goals are, what your values are, what you're trying to accomplish. And you just can't let people, get in the way of that. I do think kind of where I have a hard time with it is like, yes, of course, you want to live your life, fulfill these experiences, but I think it just goes back into the perspective of there's so much time, right? And people say, oh, well, you don't have time, you're not young forever. But I mean, I don't know, you really are the holder of your destiny, right? You are the one that is in control of your life. So you make time for what you care about, right? And so I think, if you really want to travel, like put yourself up in a good position where you can travel as much as you can later. Like I have clients who are, I have a 55-year-old client and he moves really well. He's very stress free from what I can tell. I mean, his work's a little stressful, but as far as him as a person, like I don't sense any kind of angst from him. And he really enjoys his life and he's going to Europe this month, right? And so there's plenty of time. And I got another client who's going to Paris this month as well, and he's 65 and he takes care of his body tremendously well and he moves great. He's got a few, banged up stuff, but life is not over at 30. We're not even, depending what age you are, you're barely a third, a fourth, or halfway through your life. So set yourself up to have the one you want. Thank you.